हेलो माय डियर फ्रेंड्स, कैसे हैं आप लोग। उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सब अच्छे होंगे। सर्विस इज़ गुड फॉर द बॉडी एंड सोल, फ्रॉम द बुक थिंक लाइक अ मॉन्क, written by Jay Shetty. Chapter Service. I have already touched on Joseph Campbell's concept of the mythic hero's journey. It is a formula describing the steps that a hero goes through when he embarks on an adventure, encounters trials and obstacles, and returns victorious. One of the key elements of the hero's journey is one we often overlook, the last stage which Campbell called return with the elixir. The hero's journey isn't fulfilled until he makes it home safely and shares what he has gained the elixir with others. The idea of service is woven into classic story structure as a key part of a happy ending. Sian Korn is living out the hero's journey. She made her name as a teacher of yoga asana. She was and still is a marquee teacher at yoga conferences and festivals around the world. But at one point in her career as a yoga teacher, she realized that with her platform she could make an even more meaningful impact in the world. So she shifted her focus to serving at risk communities. Korn decided to try bringing breath and meditation techniques to those in need, starting with kids who had been sexually exploited. Then she grew her practice into working with other society people deemed as outcasts, such as prostitutes and drug addicts. From that vantage point, she reached back into the yoga community to co-found of the mat into the world, a non-profit that links yoga with activism. As dedicated as she is to service, Korn maintains that she gets more than she gives. Find me someone who has gone to the darkest parts of their own character, where they were so close to the self-destruction, and found a way to get up and out of it, and I will bow on my knees to you. You are my teacher. As Korn found, service gives back to us. Studies show that when we pursue compassionate goals, those aimed at helping others or otherwise helping to make the world a better place, we are less likely to have symptoms of anxiety and depression. Then we focus on improving or protecting our own status or reputation. The act of living to others activates the pleasure center of our brain. It's a win-win-win. This may be why those who help others tend to live longer, be healthier, and have a better overall sense of well-being. Monks believe that the pillar of service makes our lives better in many ways. Service connects us. When you serve, it's hard to be lonely. In most scenarios, you have to go out into the world to help other people. Service amplifies gratitude. Service gives you a broad view of all that you have. Service increases compassion. When you serve, you see that the world needs what you have to offer. Service builds a self-esteem. Helping others tells you that you are making a difference in the world. You have a sense of meaning and purpose. The ashram is designed around the intention to serve, and it's easier to live with that at your highest intention when everyone around you is on board. A life of service is far more challenging in the modern world, and we can't all follow the monks 24/7 model, but the monk practice shows us why and how we should adopt a service mindset. The service mindset. The word seva in Sanskrit for selfless service. The Bhagavad Gita says that giving simply because it is right to give, without thought of return, at a proper time, in proper circumstances, and to a worthy person in sattvic giving. Is sattvic giving. Giving in the mode of goodness. Monks are solely motivated by the selfless service to give others opportunities that we had and didn't have, to better others' lives and the human condition. We took this mission to heart in small and large ways. Within the ashram, we tried to serve each other every day. Monks don't make grand gestures. Love is in the small things. If someone was having trouble waking up on time, we did help them. If someone was working late, we did save food for them. We are consistent and intentional. We remember that we never know what someone is going through, so we treat them with the gentleness you would give someone who is in pain, with the generosity you would give someone who is hungry, with the compassion you would give someone who is misunderstood. This attitude radiated beyond the ashram. When we traveled, we always carried extra food with us so that we had some to give away. We weren't ending world hunger, but we help any hungry person is to water the seeds of compassion. On a larger scale, we participated in a program called Annam Annamrita, which provides more than 1 million meals a day to the unprivileged children of India. We often went to Mumbai to cook in the kitchens or to serve food in the schools. The students were given khichdi, a rice and lentil porridge made with ghee that's considered a staple in Ayurvedic cooking, and afterward they would receive dessert, a sweet rice pudding called kheer. The first time I handed a child kheer, her gratitude was so apparent that I was humbled. It was the same with every child every time, each face radiating joy. I hate cooking, the hot kitchen full of people, the massive pots to be tended, but the kids' faces and the sad truth they told about how rare and special the food was to them made it easy to feel grateful for the opportunity to serve. At the ashram, instead of saying how was work, we might say, have you served today? If you were wondering what monk water cooler talk sounds there you have it. If you were wondering what monk water cooler talk sounds like, there you have it. Set aside the obstacles for a moment and imagine if everyone had a service mindset. We would ask ourselves new questions. How does this serve a broader purpose? How am I serving the people around me, at work, at home, in my community? How can I use my talents to serve others and make a difference? Remember Emma Slade, who uses her financial skill to serve her charity work, and ask yourselves, what do I know that is of any use? We have seen that happiness and gratitude is spread through communities. The same is true for service. When you serve, you mention it to your friends. You might bring someone else with you. Someone joins you and they tell 2 friends. When you participate in service, you do your part to spread the value of service in your culture. In our culture, most people think about one person themselves. Maybe their radius of care is a bit bigger, including their immediate family. That's maybe 5 to 10 people worrying about one another. But if you expand your radius of care, I believe that people feel it if others extends their. दोस्तों मैं ये ट्राई दिस शॉर्ट्स में डालूँगी, एक्सटेंड योर रेडियस ऑफ केयर. आप उसको वहाँ से ज़रूर देखिएगा और ट्राई भी करिएगा, मुझे कमेंट में बताइएगा. Radius of care to include you. I believe that you will feel it. And what if we dare to imagine that everyone were thinking like this? You will have some 7.8 billion people thinking about you, and vice versa. I don't see why we shouldn't dream big. When will you be ready to serve? Out in the modern world, no matter how much we want to help others, we are distracted from the service mindset by the desire to be financially and emotionally stable and secure. If you are lost and disconnected, your service will be cumbersome and less fulfilling. But when is the right time? Will it ever be right? Internal exploration has no end point. It's an ongoing practice. Your problems will never be completely solved. Take care of yourself, yes, but don't wait until you have enough time and money to serve. You will never have enough. There are 3 simple modes to describe our relationship with money and material wealth. The first is selfish. I want more, as much as I can get, and I want it for all myself. The second is sufficiency. I have just enough to get by. I am not suffering, but I have nothing to give. The third is service. I want to give what I have, and I want more in order to give more. Moving from the sufficiency mindset to the service mindset means changing our relationship with ownership. The more detached we are, the easier it is to let go of our time and money. Some of our trips as monks were pilgrimages to bath in the sacred rivers. I went to the Gangas, the Yamunas, and the Kaveri. We didn't swim or play in the holy water. Instead, we performed rituals. One involved scooping as much water as we could into our hands, then putting it back into the river. We took from water to give back to water as a reminder that we didn't own anything. Charity isn't giving of yourself. You are taking something that was already on earth and giving it back to earth. You don't have to have to give. Sindhu Tai Sapkal was married at 12 to a 30-year-old man. When she was 20 years old with 3 sons, 9 months pregnant, she was beaten and thrown into a cowshed. She gave birth there, cutting her own umbilical cord with a sharp rock. Shunned by her maternal village, she lived on the streets with her newborn, begging and singing for money. She was struck by the number of orphans she saw and took them under her wing. She began begging on their behalf as well as her own. Her efforts grew, and she became known as the mother of orphans. Her organizations have now housed and helped more than 1,400 children in India. Sindhu Tai didn't serve because she had something to give. She served because she saw pain. In a series of experiments, researchers at University of California, Berkeley found that people with less money actually tend to give more. In one situation, people were given $10 and told that they could choose an amount to share with anonymous strangers. People who were lower in socio-economic status were more generous than wealthier participants. These findings are backed up by a survey of charitable giving in 2011, which showed that Americans in the bottom percentage of income gave an average 3% of their earnings to charity, where people in the top 20% gave half that 1%. Just to be fair, the wealthy are still responsible for over 70% of charitable contributions. Why those with less give more may have to do with their exposure to hardship. UC Berkeley professor of psychology Dieter Kentler says that people with fewer resources tend to need to lean on others, family members, friends, those in their community for help. Those with more money conversely can buy help and are therefore more distant from this kind of day-to-day struggle. The poor may have greater empathy for others in need. Some philanthropists such as Oprah Winfrey have mentioned their own prior experience of poverty as a motivation for giving. The question to contemplate is who is wealthier, the one with money or the one who serves? पेज ही नहीं पलट रहा. Serve with intention. I had come to the ashram to serve, and I was saying by my goodbyes. One monk who had been like a big brother to me took me aside. He said something like, if your health and being a monk isn't right for you, then doesn't mean you can't serve. If you feel you can serve better by being married or becoming a chef or darning socks for the needy, that takes priority. Service to humanity is the higher goal. His words reassured me, and that just because I was leaving didn't mean my intention had to change. One can serve with a mix of intentions, broad and narrow. We might do it to be liked, we feel good about ourselves, to look good, or connect with other people to receive some kind of reward. But if you are out there helping your friends move, cooking for them, celebrating them, and then you wonder, why doesn't anyone come help me? Or why did everyone forget my birthday? You have missed the point. You are seeing yourself as the giver and then as the receiver, and imagining that when service is done, your depth is created. A true service doesn't expect or even want anything in return. Nonetheless, the service itself often is happiness, as both the Bhagavad Gita and the signs show. When I do something to serve you and you are happy, I am happy. But in service, selfish is if it brings you joy. It is selfish if it teaches your children a lesson? Of course not. If a certain kind of giving makes you happy or benefits you in some way, that's a great place to start. After I left the ashram, I led retreats from London to Mumbai, giving people from the UK and the other parts of Europe a chance to serve midday meals with Annamrita. One man who came on a retreat with me brought his kids aged 13 and 14. They returned from that trip having witnessed and felt the gratitude of people who didn't have much in their lives. The father was thrilled at how transformed these kids were. His trip was not completely selfless. He wanted his children to learn and grow, but it is still the right thing to do. In fact, the learning opportunity he saw for his children is an example of the mutual benefits of service. The problems that some of us face as mental anxiety and depression, loneliness, whereas for many of the people in need of service, the greatest challenge are more basic: food, clothing, shelter. We can heal our mental challenges by helping them with their physical needs. Service therefore is a reciprocal exchange. You are not saving anyone by helping them. You need help as much as they do. When we are in service, we are instrument of grace and compassion. We feel this, and sometimes it goes to our heads. But remember that whatever you are giving was given to you. When you pass it on, you can't take credit for it. ट्राई दिस दोस्तों, अच्छा है सब. आप एक बार सब चीज़ें ट्राई ज़रूर करिएगा. बाय फॉर नाउ. मिलते हैं हम नेक्स्ट वीडियो में. बाय.